Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Bantaba. I am your uncle, Chris. We are glad you've come this far on this journey with us, and we hope to take you all the way to the end. Last episode was quite an episode. We had the opportunity to invite some of the greatest minds in the campus of Far Eastern Federal University. It was a lovely conversation with them about the role of women in Africa's development. They showed nothing but prowess and their intelligence on the topic. Today, yet again, we have brought to your view an interesting but sensitive topic, which for a long time has been the question many Africans have failed to ask themselves. On today's show, we have important guests who are willing to take the bull by the horn and address one of the major issues which have proved to contribute to the setback of Africa in this modern era. Based on popular opinion, Africa seems to give the impression that we are united, but are we really? Is Africa united? And what is the root of Pan-Africanism? I'm pretty sure we're eager to listen to what our guests have in store for us. Well then, let's get into it. We'll be introducing our guests now. Once again, from the Far Eastern Federal University, we have selected one of the few who have proved themselves in the spirit of Africanism. When it comes to the matter of unity, togetherness, and sense of belonging in Africa-related matters, they can be counted as one of the best exemplars. Based on what they decide to share on this matter today, you can decide whether to believe that Africa is united or not. That is, if you don't already have your ideas. I am sure you don't want to miss this conversation, as we will be experiencing some mind-blowing intelligence field session today. It is with great pleasure that I welcome our first guest from Sierra Leone, a master's student of public health in leadership and governance, and the president of the Association of African Students in Vladivostok, Kika.
Hello, thank you.
Also from Nigeria, a third-year student of medicine and the Vice President of the Association of African Students in Vladivostok, Accra, Niger.
Thank you for having me.
From South then, a student of Power and Electrical Engineering, Adele.
So much for
Now before we start, let me get us familiar with the word Pan-Africanism. Pan-Africanism is a general term for various movements in Africa that have as their common goal the unity of Africans and the elimination of colonialism and white supremacy from the continent. In 1944, several African organizations in London joined to form the Pan-African Federation, which for the first time demanded African autonomy and independence. The Federation convened in 1945 in Manchester, the Sixth Pan-African Congress, which included such future political figures as Jomo Kenyatta from Kenya, Kwame Nkrumah from the Gold Coast, S.L. Akitola from Nigeria, Wallace Johnson from Sierra Leone, and Ralph Matoe from Togo. While at the Manchester Congress, Nkrumah founded the West African National Secretariat to promote a so-called United States of Africa. Now, I would like to hear from you. What is your opinion about Pan-Africanism? What is the origin, the motivation behind Pan-Africanism, and the aim for pushing the movement of Pan-Africanism? Elijah, please.
All right, thank you so much, Christina, for that question. So, what do I understand by Pan-Africanism? What is it actually? So, going back into history, would say that Africa actually faced a really dark period, and that was when we had all the slavery, all the colonization, and all of that. And then we had some Africans, right, who really saw that this was not nice and this wasn't good for our continent and for our people. And they were the ones who got up and then rose up to the challenge that they wanted to resist the whole colonization and slavery of the African people. One, I think the originators of this are not just maybe the elite who we can mention their names and all of that. Even the very people during the trans-Mediterranean movement and all of that, those guys who resisted, those guys, some of them actually committed suicide, right? Some of them actually tried to resist. They were the originators of Pan-Africanism because they tried to resist the oppression of the African people. And of course, many years later, other people now rose up to challenge the oppression and everything going on. So, in my own opinion, I think Pan-Africanism is the solidarity where we try to see a better Africa. One, not just to take away the oppressors, but to also uplift Africa. So now that we've successfully pushed the colonizers out of our continent and all of that, how then do we now lift Africa? How then do we now make Africa truly a home? So that's my own understanding of Pan-Africanism.
Thank you very much. Do we have anyone who would like to answer that?
I think I have a lot to add to that. Talking of the origin and the perception of Pan-Africanism, as for me, I always base it on four foods. And because like Pan-Africanism itself is geared towards uniting Africa as a whole, and of course suppressing the Western or American dictatorship in Africa and unite Africa as a whole, and we being independent. So this whole movement, as I said earlier, I can see them like in four foods. One starting with the actual one that started back in America and Europe, to be specific, where we saw like a Pan-African movement towards the black race, to be specific, like the slaves that were in Africa, in America or in Europe. It was a movement for them to be seen equally and treated equally in these places. And we also see another one that was brought up by Kwame Nkrumah and others, the unification of Africa as a whole, which for me, I mostly don't support it because it's actually very difficult for now to unite Africa as a country. Imagine 54 countries coming together, and we all have our own strengths and weaknesses. Just imagine uniting Africa as a whole now. From that perspective, Sierra Leone as an example will gain a lot because we are trying to be there. The bigger ones like Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Egypt, these ones will like maybe tend to say, no, these guys are enjoying from our resources. So it was actually also a very nice move. And of course, the third one, which is my favorite among the Pan-Africanism, is the one trying to like bring all Africans on board to create this brotherhood that like we should live together, those on the continent of Africa or maybe out of Africa. And I think that should be actually the motive or goal of Pan-Africanism, to see that like Africans see each other, like for example, a South Sudanese seeing a Sierra Leonean as a brother, or a Nigerian seeing an Egyptian as a brother. And that should actually be the thing now, because like the continent itself is not actually ready yet to be united as a one. And the last one actually is a movement towards eradicating the neo-colonialism, or like the influence from our colonial fathers, the Western world and America to be specific. And we also have a lot of Pan-African fighters for that, which of course I really admire, talking the likes of Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, talking of Mugabe and the rest. But the only thing I think sometimes they do wrong is, if we are saying we are letting go the Western world for us to be independent, it's not like we are going to detach everything from them. Sometimes it's good for us to still go to a table and dialogue. It should be a mutual something. We benefited from them and them benefited from us also. So I think that's how I see Pan-Africanism for now.
Thank you very much. Adele, would you like to answer that, or I should move to the next question?
Yeah, sure. But as my two colleagues have already spoken now, based on Pan-Africanism. I think what they said is true. Pan-Africanism was basically a movement that was fighting for Africans' dignity, like you said, during the slavery, where it started. The black people wanted to be be freed instead of being subjected or seen as objects. We're struggling to make sure that they're also had as human. And that, of course, was the starting point of Pan-Africanism until where we are today, where we are fighting for a united state of Africa. Yeah. So for me, it's all clear, like they said, and that is all I can add.
Thank you very much. So moving to the next. This is actually going to be the foundation on which this whole discussion is based on. So, do you think Africa is united? Like, what is your opinion on this topic? And are we really still on the principle of Pan-Africanism? Looking at Africa today, can you really say we are still on that foundation that was built by the past Africanists? Kika, would you like to share?
Yeah, I think I can go on this again. For me, I would straightly say it's a no. Africa actually is not united. And even our people that started the movement, Kwame Nkrumah and others that started the movement, didn't achieve what they wanted. You know, it's very difficult for an African to move within the continent of Africa than to even move outside of Africa. For example, maybe going to Zambia as a Sierra Leonean, we have a lot of scrutiny and screaming than for me to come straight to Russia, which would be very simple. So it's a very big no. Africa actually is not united because we have a lot of Africans that they feel they are not Africans. So we start there. And we have other Africans that do not even want to see a brother African. You know, they will be saying different things about each other, like countries, you see countries fighting each other. We have tried to actually unite the continent, but the continent is not united.
Well, based on the question, is Africa really united? Me personally, I think the obvious answer would be a no, but to a certain extent, I believe African unity is something in progress. Yeah, it is not fully. We're not fully united. We see that, but from the look of things, we are slowly moving there. The reason why I believe we are slowly moving there, we have seen scenarios whereby we have seen integrations happening, and this is what I believe would bring African unity. Let's say, for instance, where I come from, the eastern part of Africa, we have the regional bloc, that is the African community. And the restrictions, like my brother said, we actually have free movement within us. We don't have issues to do with the screening, like you said. As long as you have a passport, you just go to the border and tell them, I want to visit the neighboring country, and you're free to go. Well, it happens that it might only be for the eastern part, but the other side, it might not be the case. But then, these are things that we can address with time. Yeah, you just have to believe and work on it. But for me, African unity is something in progress. That's what I can say.
Thank you very much. I would like to throw this question to Elijah. Vika mentioned something about we as Africans not being able to travel within African countries. For instance, if I'm Nigerian, I can't travel to Sierra Leone, for example. So my question is, what do you think is the reason for all this? Can you attribute it to the fact that maybe international policies, or I don't know, what do you think is causing the fact that we as Africans can't, because we're Africans, can't travel to other African countries? I should be able to go to Ghana, I should be able to go to South Sudan, I should be able to go to Egypt, I should be able to go to Sierra Leone, Zambia, Gambia. Why can't I go to some African countries despite the fact that I'm African?
Well, I think to answer the question, it still boils down to the issue of, are we truly united? Because if we're really united, then there shouldn't be all these issues of border restrictions and finding it difficult to move, right? And in fact, it's not just about going alone. Let's talk about doing business, the ease of business. I think it was like a few years ago, I don't know if it's in 2008 or something, there was this Lagos Pact that was signed, that there should be free trade and all of that between African countries. But when I look at it, like, is it truly being carried out? Because aside for the fact that you're going to experience difficulties in getting visas and all of that, is it really safe, right, traveling from one highway to the other? Because we now have lots of infiltrations, we have lots of security issues and all of that. So it actually hinders real movement, like free movement. So I think one of the issues is the fact that we are not so united yet. In as much as we've made so much progress, just like they rightly talked regionally, if you go to the east, we have the Eastern African Community. In the west, of course, we have the ECOWAS, and then I think is it is SADC for the Southern African Development Commission and all of that. But I think we really need to, beyond having a name, right, beyond having all these institutions, we really need to look down, like, are they really functional, and the aims of creating these organizations, are they really being achieved? I think the main ideals of Pan-Africanism, as at when the founding fathers were clamoring for it, was uniting Africa economically, politically, socially, and all of that. I think we've not really achieved all of the ideals, all of the goals they had, and we still have a long way to go. It's really sad that we cannot really, sometimes, like I think Gika rightly mentioned, it's easier going to countries outside of Africa than moving sometimes within Africa itself. And it's actually sad because they actually created these restrictions, right, for us. All of these boundaries before colonization, they did not exist. We had trade routes, we had a way we moved, right, without all of these restrictions. But due to the Berlin Conference, I think was it 1894, I can't remember clearly, but they divided Africa artificially and they created all the borders and all of that. And then I think we really need to look at what we want for ourselves and look at how to push Africa forward.
Thank you. Very briefly, I would read a discussion that took place in one of the debates of Pan-Africanism. So during the second All African People's Conference held in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia in 1960, a debate between the Africanists who wanted the political and economic unity of Africa, such as Nkrumah of Ghana, Sekou Touré of Guinea-Conakry, and Julius Nyerere, and others ensued. Nyerere's response to having a unified Africa was that it is hard for a country to give away its sovereignty once they've earned it. The idea was that African countries have already started gaining independence from their colonial rulers. Surrendering that freedom they have struggled to earn to a continental government was a chance they couldn't take. These disagreements gave rise to two rival factions within the Pan-African movement, the Casablanca Bloc and the Brazzaville Bloc. And Nyerere is justified because till this day there is no political and economic unity of the whole African continent. Now, what do you think? Is there still some notable level of Nkrumah's version of Pan-Africanism today? Or shall we consider the political and economic unity of Africa dead and buried? Adele, if you would like me to...
No,
okay.
it's okay. I've had now, for me, I believe, like I said earlier, that African unity is something. I personally believe it is. We have achieved something, but we're still working on it to achieve the bigger picture. Now, with what Julia Nyerere said, Mwalimu Julius Nyerere, actually, what he said is more of not just achieving political progress, but in other ways as well. Now, when I look at the economic aspect is going to be a little bit hard because, like my colleague said earlier, that there are countries within Africa that are less fortunate. They don't have the right resources compared to others. Now, to integrate them with others is going to be hard because the other one will think the smaller one is benefiting from the bigger one. And if that happens, it will bring a lot of questions. The big one, of course, will come with terms and conditions that might not favor the integration. But with time, these are things I believe they are very simple and they can be addressed. Me, I believe African unity, with time, it can be achieved. That's what I know.
Okay, thank you. Kika, would you like to add something to that?
Yes, of course. It's actually very correct, but I can say repeat it we are actually not ready yet for that kind of unity, making Africa as a country, you understand? But with time, maybe it will be possible. So as I earlier mentioned, he said some countries are like weaker in terms of economy and in terms of other resources. So uniting Africa now is like disturbing the other ones that are like stronger. So Kwame and others started something very nice, and I know this was like the major reason why they were not able to like complete their mission, you know, because you won't be uniting a continent of 54 countries and of different level of strength in terms of resources, political power, and just maybe in few years. It will happen, but I think we are getting there gradually, but not now. Yeah.
Thank you very
I
much.
think I'd like to ask something.
Yes.
You know, I was just thinking about it, right? How is it easy for our colonizers to unite different ethnic groups, different communities into one country? So I'm like, doesn't mean we need like an external colonizer again. If at all these goals of the Pan-Africanists are to be achieved, do we need an external colonizer to come unite the 54, 55 countries? Because believe you me, I think if they really want to do it, I don't know if it will be possible, but that's actually a question for another day. What I'm trying to say is, we might not really achieve African unity in terms of all countries coming together to form one particular country. It's going to really be hard because there are going to be issues of political tussle. I mean, who is going to be the number one president? Just imagine, even in that time, right? You had a lot of people who were actually clamoring for Pan-Africanism. So would maybe Kwame Nkrumah allow the other person from the other side like take over like the continent as a president? So yeah, of course, this were like the issues that were there, and I think till today these issues are still there. What we need to look at is how we can increase our partnership between our countries, right? We mustn't be united under a same name. Okay, of course, we already have a common name, Africa. We mustn't be united like Africa being a country, but we should say we can increase partnerships like in terms of trade, in terms of military sharing, in terms of doing business and basically intelligence and everything. So I think yeah, that's one way we can actually look at unity from. Unity is actually not conformity. Like sometimes people confuse unity, right? You must do one thing, like everybody must do the same thing for us to be united. You can be distinct but united. You can have your country, you reserve your name, but we like increase partnership and then we see how we can deal better with each other.
Thank you very much. When Nkrumah hosted the first All-African People's Conference in Accra, Ghana, newly independent states such as Egypt, Ethiopia, Ghana, Liberia, Libya, Morocco, Tunisia, and Sudan attended. The political and social unity between the Arabic and Black African countries were there. It was in fact agreed in the conference to support the struggle of the National Liberation Front in Algeria against French colonial rule and against apartheid South Africa. These were African states uniting against a common enemy. After that, African countries developed a foreign policy of non-alignment between the US and the USSR, and the need to establish an African identity in world affairs based on the Bandung Declaration and the Charter of the UN. Now, given what's happening in the ECOWAS, recently Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger announced their withdrawal from the regional body due to what they call external interference in the ECOWAS. Now, this is where the issue lies. How do we bring back that unity among African countries that the founding fathers of the African Union envisaged? How do you think we can make this foundation that they've laid in the past? How do we think we can bring it back, or how do we think we can strengthen it? Okay?
I think this one is a very big one, and to start with, even the guys that started this whole big movement had some issues with other head of states in Africa. Kwame Nkrumah was leading something that was very important for the unity of Africa, but there was other head of states that were against it, saying that like he just wants to be like biased, or like his power test, he wants to like rule Africa as a whole. You understand? So we still envisage such things, like for the ECOWAS thing happening right now. There are some member states that have withdrawn already, and there are still some remaining. But the thing is, our leaders here are not straightforward in doing things. ECOWAS will be like, okay, we are against coup. Coup should not happen. And you will see, for example, we had attempted coup in our country, Sierra Leone. What did ECOWAS do? Instead of going to the country to like solve the situation there, they intended to like rescue the person that is termed to be the criminal, and he was brought to Nigeria instead of facing his punishment. So I think we just need to like move forward, and like Elijah was saying, let's continue with our economic partnership for now, because let's just say we have the leaders that can do it for us, but we are still fighting together because we don't have these leaders yet. Our leaders are still polluted. They are not delivering for us. So like it will be difficult. Yeah.
Okay. Adele, do you have anything to say to that? Or I can move to the next question.
Yeah, well, on the case of ECOWAS, as you say, the two countries that withdrew from the regional law, well, that's supposed to be very unfortunate, because it is a sign that we are going backward instead of moving forward. But yeah, those things, I believe they can easily be addressed, because it was just a matter of differing in reasons. One was saying what we did was right, the other one was saying what we did was wrong. And two wrongs, they never make a right thing. And with time, one of them will realize that I think brother should have come back, and I'm very sure it will be okay. It was just unfortunate. That's what I cannot do.
That's it?
Yeah, that's all I can do.
Thank you. This is going to be a question for everyone. I want to hear your opinion on it. Do you, as a person, as an African, do you prefer a united Africa under one government, or do you prefer an African Union as independent states? Elijah?
Can you repeat the question?
Do you prefer a united Africa under one government, like United States of Africa? Or do you prefer an African Union as independent states, like you suggested? We can be individual, Nigeria, Gambia, like that, but we should have more relationship, international relationship. So which of the systems do you prefer?
Well, I think, in my opinion personally, if I'm to choose one, of course, the both of them can actually work if we have great players on board and they're really sincere and they really want to make things work for Africa. The both systems can work. But if I'm to choose one, I think it's obvious that I'll go for African countries remaining as they are, but to have a strong African Union, and then that just serves as a platform for more partnership within member states like African countries. So I think, yeah, we should actually remain as we are now, or see how we can go. Because why I say this is the fact that if you look back, right, during the fight for like when the whole Pan-Africanism started, they had a common enemy, and what was that common enemy? The colonizers. They wanted to fight and push them off our continent. That was what like pushed them to start this whole idea and all of that. Now, what's our common enemy? This question will bring different answers. Some persons say, oh, we just want to unite together. What's the purpose for unity? Now, I think for me personally, I think common enemy now is even corruption. So our leaders truly willing and ready to see how they can come together to fight our common enemy. Of course, we can still say we have neo-colonizers and all of that, like still going on in some parts of Africa, right? But corruption is a big player. Like it's one issue that has affected several African countries, and our very leaders are involved in this. So how are we now going to now fight it? Since the persons who are to fight it are the ones carrying it out. So basically, I think, yeah, for me, African countries should remain as they are, but African Union should serve as like a big umbrella where more partnership is encouraged between member states. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Adele, what is your opinion about the question? Or do you want me to repeat it again?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so do you prefer a united Africa under one government or remaining as an individual state?
Yeah, well, for me, I believe remaining as individual states is better because it's really not going to be easy to bring all these countries under one state. It's not going to be that easy. The easiest way is functioning as independent, but you have a channel which is the African Union you respond to, which is far less. Let's say me, I would believe African Union is much achievable when we function as a bloc. Let's say we integrate the blocs that we have, the ECOWAS, maintaining West African states, East African community with the countries in the eastern part, and then the SAD with the countries in the South African region. Then when we get the countries in the north and bring all these four integrations into one, I think that would be what we might at least call a political achievement of African Union. For me, that's what I would prefer. Yeah, otherwise, all of us, all the countries, all the 54 countries, it's not that easy to be joined. It's not even about 54. I think African Union or Pan-Africanism goes even up to the western part, the islands of Bahamas and so on. These are part of us. They actually belong to the African. Yeah, we have the same ancestors, so we count them as part of us. And the best way we can achieve this is maybe using the integration that we have. We join them as one, and we make sure that one head of the bloc represents the member states of that region. And yeah, that is what I would prefer as an alternative.
Thank you. Gika?
Of course, Kwame and others tried to do this thing. We are so powerful. Gaddafi came, he continued from where Kwame stopped to unify Africa under one governance, and it was impossible for them. So I think I won't go for that one, Africa under one governance. Like the other speaker said, I may also support the African Union. Let's exist, because nobody actually will be ready now, because that was the problem with Kwame and Gaddafi and others. Nobody is ready to give their independence away. I think they have fought for so many years. So I think we just should maintain the African Union, try to support each other in terms of development, being like a brother's keeper, and to see the continent as a better one, because Africa is well diverse. I think even the diversity of Africa will disturb it to go under one governance. So I go in for the African Union and not one government state. Yeah.
All right, thank you for your contributions. Any African ruler that advocates for the political unity of Africa is always at odds with, most particularly, former colonial government. Nnamdi Azikiwe in the 1930s, among the Pan-Africanists, was considered by the then colonial secretary Oliver Stanley as the biggest danger of the lot due to his writings. Gaddafi, who assumed the mantle of leadership for United States of Africa after the death of Nkrumah, was targeted by the West and deliberately eliminated. Now, this takes me back to the motivation behind the foundation of Pan-Africanism, which was because of colonization and enslavement. We can say, yeah, it's kind of met the goal for eradicating colonization, but can we really say it actually did? Because if we look at it in this modern era, we can still say colonization still has a hold in some African countries. So can we say it really eradicated colonization? I don't know if you get my question.
Yeah.
You do? Okay. So, well, based on the fact that Pan-Africanism was laid on the foundation that we had a common enemy, which was colonial masters, the leaders, and they fought to eradicate it. But looking at it now, we can still see the effects of colonization in some African countries, and it is still happening. So can we say it was really, really effective, or it's just what it is? Elijah, would you like to shed more light on that?
Yeah, defining it based on their goals, right? I think they were able to achieve a great result, and the burden now lied on the next generation of carrying out the task. Like they've achieved their own result in their own right. They got independent state for us. So now the next set of leaders, I think the burden was on them to see how they'll carry that mantle and build strong institutions. Now that we've gotten our independence, how then do we really push for our sovereignty? The independence was just paperwork and all of that. So we really now needed to, in practical terms, see how we can get our independence. So I think that's where we actually have some issues, because you see, like in the 1960s, 70s, and 80s, there were a lot of coup d'etats going on, lots of loots and all of those things. So it was like they fought for something precious, handed it over to the next generation, and then it was useless or somehow maybe. And then that's why some persons actually ask if truly Africa was ready to gain freedom at that time. I think we were quite ready, but somehow like lots of issues came up, and yeah. Now the burden actually lies on the current leaders we have, right? We're not going to keep on lamenting about what has happened already. So we need to really take decisive steps into making sure we stop the new colonization going on at the moment. You see lots of African countries, there's this influence of external power still looting our resources, looting lots of, in fact, even our human capacity, our human resources and all of that. So I think we really need to see how we can stop all of this new colonization going on at the moment, and it lies on us all to do that.
Thank you very much. One important question that I want to throw to Kika. Are our current leaders, African leaders, prepared to suffer the consequences of advocating for African political and economic unity to the point of risking their lives? If there are, who are these people? Where are they?
I think before I answer that question, let me just buttress what Elijah just answered. I can say directly or indirectly, Africa is still colonized, because we still have in fact now we have the highest neo-colonialized impact on Africa, because like African countries for now, we can't do anything or we can't take any decision without the influence of our colonial fathers or the Western world. As you earlier mentioned, you see, there's this part of Pan-Africanism movement where like the African leaders want to like halt colonial fathers from decisions in Africa. You always see this kind of Pan-African leaders like having a bad end, either being killed or like imprisoned. For example, the likes of Gaddafi, the likes of Idi Amin of Uganda, they like always term them as bad leaders. These people are against human rights because like they don't want their leadership to like influence their dictatorship on Africa. So moving forward to this question, I think we may have such leaders in Africa for now, but they're not plenty. Ready to sacrifice everything for their country, ready to sacrifice what it takes for them to see their country to be free. It's not easy, because we still see African leaders betraying others based on the Western influence or other things. Or you can see a very young, energetic politician coming up. As Elijah mentioned about corruption, in the process of becoming a leader, he or she becomes corrupted. And when he's there, he cannot do what is like fitting for his or her country. So I think there might be, because you can't just say, okay, like for example, you can see a very good politician now, Malema of South Africa is like very active when it comes to Pan-Africanism. But what is the go ahead, or what is the assurance that like when he becomes president, he will actually deliver what he said? If he won't be influenced by the Western world. So that's it.
Thank you very much. The next important question I will be asking Adele is there anything external powers, like the international bodies, the colonizers on the continent should fear about African unity?
Is there anything the African?
Yeah, let's say if there is maybe, fortunately, a United States of Africa today, do you think there is something about it that the united bodies, the international bodies, are opposing intentionally? Maybe because they feel if Africa is united, they will be much more stronger than they are now.
Yeah,
What do you think?
yes, sure, that is true. It's very true when, let's say, if Africa is to unite under one umbrella, it is a bitter truth. When we unite, we're supposed to be greater than, we're supposed to be strong. As they say, unity is strength. And when you are separated, you're weak. And that's the reason why you see the external powers are doing whatever it takes to make sure that there is no such a thing as United Africa. As we go back to the likes of Muammar Gaddafi, who was at the front of uniting Africa. We all saw what happened to him. We all saw what happened. What started as a small political coup in the country ended up taking his life, and when he died, the only person that tried to revive it was Mugabe. And when Mugabe again also left, I don't think we're even talking about it in the African Union so far, because the leaders there, these are people who function under the influence of the outsiders, the external powers. So yeah, if we were to unite as Africa, of course, we shall have some strength, and the other part of the world is seeing the strength, and that's why they are doing whatever it takes to make sure that such a dream, if it is to be achieved, it should not be now. It should take a lot of time. Yes, I believe we will be strong actually.
Thank you very much. In 1963, the Organization of African Unity, OAU, was founded to promote unity and cooperation among all African countries and to bring an end to colonialism. It had 53 members by 1995. The OAU struggled with border disputes, aggression or subversion against one member by another, separatist movements, and the collapse of order in member states. One of its longest commitments and greatest victories was the end of apartheid and the establishment of majority rule in South Africa. Effort to promote even greater African economic, social, and political integration led to the establishment in 2001 of the African Union, a successor organization to the OAU modeled on the European Union. The AU fully superseded the OAU in 2002 after a transitional period. Now, ever since this transition, has the AU been able to accomplish something as phenomenal and crucial to the African history as the OAU? Like that.
Well, I think over the years, right, we've been able to create that African, should I say African spirit, or African, like, Africans see themselves as brothers to some extent. That's why you see, like, we have I think, was that adopted in the 80s or 70s? I can't remember the year exactly, but the African Day, which we all celebrate around the globe as African Day celebration. So I think all these efforts by the African Union, right, they've helped to create a sense of brotherhood. At least when we find ourselves outside the shores of Africa, we see truly that we are Africans. And actually, sometimes when we get to interact with people from other parts of the world, we call them the whites, right? Sometimes they don't see us first as maybe Ghanaians or Nigerians, but they first see us as Africans, because basically that's our identity. So I think we share one history, and we as Africans actually have one destiny as well, and the destiny is in our hands. Actually, the African Union has they've done a great job so far in trying to be that platform that will create a synergy between member states. Of course, more has to be done because we see some African countries are still having issues of, should I say, segregation, where, for example, right, in Nigeria, we have lots of, should I say nations, because you have like, you can say the Yoruba nation, the Tiv nation, or maybe the Igbo nation, there are still calls for like that of some regions or some tribes that want to break out of their countries. So now we're actually talking about unity on a larger scale. Let's say Nigeria, Ghana, this, like, can we come together? Whilst within us, we're still having issues like of little or maybe some minor groups claiming not to really feel part of the bigger country, and then they want to break off. So I think, yeah, more has to be done because we need to look down to our local uniqueness. Like, we are distinct in various ways, but what joins us together, once our needs of shelter, once our needs of feeding, medical issues and all of that are met, we are one, we are united. And then, yeah, so I think the African Union has more to do. Like, they still have a great job to do in making sure that truly we are united and then we function as one Africa.
Thank you very much. Adele, is it safe to say today the AU is struggling in the midst of a perceived dissipating appetite for supporting continental institutions? Can I repeat the question?
Yeah.
Okay.
Use, yeah, sure.
Sorry. So, can we say that the AU today is struggling in the midst of a perceived dissipating appetite for supporting continental institutions? Like, so we know the purpose of OAG, we know the purpose of Pan-Africanism. The same purpose is for African Union. But can we really say today the appetite is there for African Union to bring together Africans?
Yeah, let's. Yeah, that's a very good question. Very interesting. Now, with African Union of the current African Union, like I said earlier, that me the last time I dropped them, it ended with Mugabe. I believe Mugabe was one of the people that was really behind and was really pushing for the achievements, for the objectives to be achieved. But anything that happened after him passing on, I believe it has not been big progress. We have seen even countries undermining the whole African Union. We had a scenario with my neighboring country, my former country, Sudan, where they had a problem, and when they were summoned to the African Union, the leaders said they had nothing to do with the African Union. They prefer to go and solve their issues elsewhere. Yeah, now that one alone is a sign that the African Union, the current African Union, is really not doing its part, and I would say it's really weak as for now. But maybe if time comes and another leader who is a real Pan-Africanist, he might revive it. But of now, I can say it's not really working.
Thank you very much. According to a book, The African Union by Tony Cabot and Timuri Lee, recognizing that the measured successes in political emancipation which have been recorded across the African continent do not seem to have translated into economic and social gains for its 1.2 billion citizens. The AU adopted a new development framework dubbed Agenda 2063. The framework calls on African leaders to rediscover the Pan-African spirit and to create the Africa Africans want. In practice, this means a new focus and engagement with the African diaspora, tapping into their strong track record in economic development. As this book shows, however, there remains deep differences over the meaning, timing, and sequencing of Pan-African integration. Indeed, different member states have different understandings of the role of African Union itself. Now, despite all the African Union has done to bring together Africa and the new funded Agenda 2063, why do we think this unification project has proved elusive. Because if we look at it, our past leaders and the current ones, they can say all they want that they've tried to unite Africa. And maybe they've tried really, or maybe not. But why do we think this unification project, this whole idea, has proved elusive? Why is it not working? Elijah?
Okay, first I'd like to say it's still as a result of neo-colonization going on, because you see, when Africa was divided, right, like the borders were created and all of that, I always say it wasn't with African interest in mind. They really just did that to ease their looting and ease how they'll be able to get resources from Africa. And then over the years now, they, of course, during colonization, they were able to achieve all of those stuff. So now, in as much as we are done with the era of colonization, we are in an era where, for example, the British, they're still somehow looting and colonizing again most of the West African countries. And then you have maybe the French, of course, France, still colonizing through new colonization Central African Republic and some of the Francophone countries, and you still have the influence of some of these external countries on most of our regions, most of our countries. So I think that one big threat to African unity, because now if we get united, right, if we are together and everything is one, who then becomes the who becomes the should I say like the maximum beneficiary of the African load? So in order for that not to happen, they prefer us to be as divided as we are, so that everyone to attend to Israel, everyone now knows, okay, this is my own loot, this is my own loot, and then they now come to get the best for themselves. So I think, yeah, we really need to come together and see that they are still not enemies, but they're on our way of progress. And in order for us to really gain economic, social, and political sovereignty, we need to see all of them together as they're still there as colonizers, and then we need to see how we can break off their impact, their grip on us, and build the Africa we truly want. 2063 seems to be quite far, but believe in me, it's going to come much more faster than we expected. There was this agreement, I think, done several years ago, that by 2010, the Eastern African countries, they were to form a very strong regional bloc. They were to have one president, one currency, and all of that. 2010 is already 14 years ago, right?
Yeah.
14 years ago, and till today, it's not yet achieved. 2063 seems to be quite far away. Oh, we're talking about Africa coming together. But if we really don't take the right steps and we don't act now, it would come and then we'd still look at it in the past and we've not really achieved African unity.
Thank you very much. Adele, do you think AU has run its course? Maybe we need a different organization. Maybe we need something more, something with a different purpose to set a new course. What do you think? Or we should just go with the AU and trust the process?
Me, I believe the organization is not the problem. I think it can still remain as AU, but the issue, AU technically is it functions with great influence from outside. Starting from the monetary funding, most of the funds that AU uses are from outside. We don't generate them within Africa. That's why you see that it doesn't have a voice. Let's look at a case whereby there is a lot of issues happening in DRC Congo, a country in Africa, but AU has no mandate to even do anything about it. It has been happening for so many years and no progress has been done, simply because the people that fund the organization itself, they are the same people causing the issue in DRC Congo. And therefore, no one is going to wake up from the African Union leadership to say, this is like this. Yes. So for me, the issue is not the name or it is not the organization. The organization should always be like that. But now the problem is the leadership itself. We should have people that are patriotic enough, who know that, yes, I have come on this seat to solve problems related to African unity. And I think by doing that would achieve the African unity.
Thank you very much. Gika, where do we go from here? What do you think we can do to achieve Pan-Africanism?
Mm, I think we have a long way to go actually. But the thing is, as we earlier said, leaders that are always like upright to fight new colonialism always end up um, dying or are always like a threat to the Western world and they see them as enemies. And as for now, we see the continent as a whole. We have leaders that are now in the continent that are on the fence. They are both for the country and both for the Western world because they are afraid. So I think we still just need leaders that are strong in spirit, that are strong for their people to stand up for Africa if we want to achieve this unity. Because we won't be on the fence and we think the African Union will work. We actually need our people back, people like Gaddafi, people like Mugabe, Idi Amin, like maybe in a Polish way, because these guys I can say they are so harsh on the Western world. So like we need people like them that are brave actually, but people that can sit with the Western world and tell them that okay, this is what Africa wants. If it is not working, leave my country or develop my country for myself. My greatest like support currently goes for this um, Ugandan president. What's his name? Is he Museveni? I don't actually know how to pronounce it. Yeah, but he's actually very modest in his Pan-Africanism. He's against the Western world in a polite way, not in a brutal way. He was saying something that like America wanted to build a military base, in his country. So they went to a table and they were discussing, okay, if your soldiers come here and they do anything wrong, they should be tried here. But America refused. They said, no, if anything happens, if any soldier does something in Uganda, they should be tried in America. And it was like, okay, if that's how the law is going, if any Ugandan does something in America, it should not be tried there. You should bring the individual to Uganda to be tried. And they were like, no, it should not work that way. And they said, okay, if the dialogue is failing, no problem. You guys should not establish your military base here. And they didn't allow it. I think these are the kind of leaders currently we need to like really fight for the African Union, not in that aggressive way because we can't stand alone. We might need them. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you very much. Elijah, do you think having a unified Africa will change narratives?
Yeah, of course. I think having a unified Africa will change the narratives, and first to start economically, because I've actually been thinking about the idea of having maybe a common currency. I don't know if that would be possible, but yeah, if it comes to bear, like if it comes to witness the light of the day, I think that would really be a great idea. And yeah, the masses will be carried along would really see Africa as our home. I've watched videos where you see people living through the Mediterranean Sea, they get attached to ships and all of that, and they don't care. Even if they die, they say it's better they die. Like actually, that's so bad, and it's really pathetic because the moment people are leaving from their home and wishing never to come back, it's actually sad because a man's natural instinct is always to long for home. He always long to go back home. So I think we have to build an Africa that is united, that is prosperous, that is peaceful. And I think we all love Africa. We want to. I mean, Africa is home basically. So if we're able to achieve this unity, right, economically, socially, we can still maintain our cultural distinctiveness. We can still have our own cultures and everything, but we fight a common enemy, which is poverty, which is insecurity, and then by the time we are able to overcome all of these problems, I think Africa definitely, like I can't imagine the development would have. I can't fathom the progress would have. So yeah, I think we would be on the right path to progress if we're united.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much. So we've come to the end of this episode of Bantaba. We thank our viewers for staying with us to the end, and we would also like to thank our guests for gracing us with their presence today. Kika, Developing Elijah. Thank you so much for your
Thank you.
contribution. We really enjoyed. Thank you. And we would also like to thank our project organizers, of course, our media team, and everyone working to make this project a success. We say thank you to you guys. And yeah, that is the end for today. Next week, same place, same time. See you. Bye.
Bye.
Goodbye.
So guys, we just concluded this episode of Bantaba. If you're watching this video, it means you already know how it went. I can bet you had a great time. We will be here next week, same time, same venue. Stay tuned. It's your favorite host, Christina. Bye.